The purple balloon swayed in the summer breeze outside Lincoln High School in Warren, Michigan. Nearly 100 people had gathered, all wearing the same color. It was her favorite. Inside the gymnasium, photographs lined the memorial table. A young woman smiling at the camera, holding a baby boy, her eyes bright with ambition. 22 years old, a business owner, a nursing student, a mother. Gone. Her name was Destiny Marshall, and 6 weeks earlier, she had escaped a house of horrors. She had run naked into the street, her body burned and beaten, gasoline soaking her skin. She had survived that night. She had given police everything they needed. Names, details, evidence. She had done everything right. And still, she ended up here. A memorial service, a closed casket, a 1-year-old son who would never remember her face. The man who killed her had walked out of jail 36 hours before her death. His mother had posted bail, $15,000. That was the price of freedom for a man charged with torture. That was the cost of 3 more lives. Destiny had grown up in Warren, the oldest of 6 siblings. Her mother, Patricia Marshall, raised them in a modest home near 8 Mile Road, working double shifts as a medical assistant to keep food on the table. Destiny learned early what hard work looked like. By the time she graduated from Lincoln High, she had already started planning her future. She wanted to open her own business, become a nurse, build something that would last. In her senior year, she launched an online boutique called Elevate. She sold clothes, accessories, jewelry. She modeled her own products, posted them on Instagram, built a following. People were drawn to her energy. She had been on the homecoming court every single year, not because she campaigned for it, but because that was just who Destiny was. When she walked into a room, people noticed. Her brother Marcus remembered those years fondly. She had this way of making you feel like you mattered. Even when she was busy with school, with work, with everything, she always had time. She would sit with you, listen, give advice. She was only a year older than me, but she felt like the wisest person I knew. In March 2020, Destiny met someone. His name was Kyle Richardson. He was 19, a year younger than her, tall and charming in the way that made people trust him too quickly. They met at a house party in Detroit. He told her she was beautiful. She thanked him. He asked for her number. She gave it to him. Within a week, they were inseparable. Kyle had grown up in Harper Woods, a small suburb just east of Detroit. His mother, Linda Richardson, was a medical transport driver. His stepfather, Thomas Richardson, was a nurse and Air Force veteran. On paper, Kyle came from a stable home. But there were things people did not see. The anger that simmered beneath his calm exterior. The jealousy that turned into obsession. The need to control everything around him. At first, the relationship felt perfect. Kyle was attentive. He called Destiny every day, sometimes multiple times. He wanted to know where she was, who she was with, what she was doing. Destiny thought it was romantic. She had never had someone care that much. Her friends saw it differently. They noticed how Kyle would show up unannounced. How he would scroll through her phone when she was not looking. How he would make comments about her clothes, her posts, the men who left comments on her photos. By the summer of 2020, Destiny was pregnant. She was 20 years old, still building her business, still in school. Kyle promised her everything would be okay. He would take care of her. They would raise their son together. They would build a life. Destiny believed him. In March 2021, their son was born. Destiny posted a photo on Facebook the day she brought him home from the hospital. She wrote a long caption about motherhood, about sacrifice, about the life she was building for her child. She tagged Kyle in the post. She called him an amazing father. She said they were building an empire together. But behind the posts, behind the smiles, something darker was growing. Kyle's jealousy intensified after the baby was born. He accused Destiny of cheating. He demanded access to her phone constantly. He wanted her passwords, her messages, her call logs. When she refused, he would explode. The first time he hit her, she was shocked. He apologized immediately. He cried. He said it would never happen again. She forgave him. It happened again and again. By the spring of 2022, Destiny had stopped posting as much. Her boutique was still running, but the photos were less frequent. Her friends noticed she had become quieter. She stopped going out. She stopped answering calls. When they asked if she was okay, she said she was fine, just busy, just tired, just dealing with life. Patricia Marshall, Destiny's mother, saw the bruises. She asked her daughter what was happening. Destiny lied. She said she had fallen. She said the baby had kicked her by accident. She said everything was fine. Patricia did not believe her, but Destiny would not talk. She had built a life with Kyle. They had a son together. They owned things together. Leaving meant starting over with nothing. So she stayed. Marcus, her brother, remembered the last time he saw his sister truly happy. It was late May 2022. They had gone to a karaoke bar in Detroit with some friends. Destiny sang her favorite song, laughing and dancing like she used to. Marcus recorded a video on his phone. In the clip, Destiny is smiling wide, her arms around her brother, both of them singing off-key. It was one of the last good memories he would have of her. 3 weeks later, everything changed. June 5th, 2022, 3 in the morning. Kyle woke Destiny up. He wanted her phone. He wanted the password. She refused. What happened next would be described in court documents as one of the most brutal domestic violence cases Wayne County prosecutors had ever seen. Kyle held Destiny hostage in their home for nearly 5 hours. He beat her. He strangled her with an extension cord, tightening it until she could not breathe, then releasing it, over and over. He poured gasoline on her body. He heated a metal spatula on the stove and burned her arms and legs. He threatened her with a power drill. He hit her with his belt until she could barely stand. When Kyle finally left the room to rest, Destiny ran. She did not grab clothes. She did not grab her phone. She ran naked out the front door and down the street to a neighbor's house. The neighbor, an older woman named Ruth Caldwell, opened the door and immediately called 911. Kyle followed Destiny outside and kicked in Ruth's door, but when he heard sirens, he fled. Police found Destiny on Ruth's couch, wrapped in a blanket, her body covered in burns and bruises. She told them everything: the jealousy, the control, the violence, the torture. Officers issued a warrant for Kyle's arrest. They found him later that morning at his mother's house in Harper Woods. He was taken into custody without incident. From her hospital bed, Destiny gave a full statement to detectives. She described every detail of what Kyle had done. She pressed charges. She wanted him in prison. She wanted him gone. On June 15th, Kyle Richardson was arraigned before Magistrate Donna Phillips in Wayne County District Court. The charges were severe: torture, criminal sexual conduct, assault with intent to cause great bodily harm, first-degree home invasion, 7 felonies in total. Prosecutors asked for a high bond. They argued Kyle was a danger to the community and a flight risk. Magistrate Phillips set bail at $150,000 with a 10% cash option, $15,000. That was all it would take to free him. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office was furious. They released a statement calling the bond inappropriate and vowing to fight for a higher amount. But they needed time. They needed to gather evidence, prepare their case, and present it to a judge at the preliminary hearing. That hearing was scheduled for late July. They never made it to that hearing. What nobody knew, what nobody could have known, was that while Kyle sat in jail waiting for his arraignment, police were investigating another crime. A body had been found. A young woman, beaten to death, left in a field on Detroit's east side. Her car had been stolen and set on fire. Investigators could not immediately identify her. They had no suspects. They had no leads. That victim's name was Shanice Carter. She was 24 years old, and Kyle Richardson had killed her. Nobody connected the two cases. Not the prosecutors, not the magistrate, not Destiny's family. Nobody knew that the man sitting in that courtroom, charged with torturing his girlfriend, had already committed murder. On July 12, 2022, Linda Richardson walked into the Wayne County Jail and posted her son's bail, $15,000. Kyle was released that afternoon with a GPS ankle monitor and orders to remain under house arrest at his mother's home. 36 hours later, 3 more people would be dead. Linda Richardson signed the paperwork at the Wayne County Jail intake desk just after 2 in the afternoon. $15,000. She had withdrawn it from her retirement account that morning. Her hands shook as she handed over the cashier's check. The clerk barely looked at her. This was routine. People posted bail every day. Kyle walked out of the facility wearing the same clothes he had been arrested in 5 weeks earlier. He did not thank his mother. He did not say anything at all. He just walked to her car and got in the passenger seat. Linda drove him home to the house on Oakwood Street in Harper Woods. Thomas Richardson, Kyle's stepfather, was waiting in the driveway. He did not speak to Kyle. He went inside without a word. A court officer arrived an hour later to fit Kyle with a GPS ankle monitor. The terms were clear. House arrest. No contact with Destiny Marshall. No leaving the property except for court appearances and approved medical appointments. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. Kyle nodded. He signed the forms. The officer left. That evening, Linda cooked dinner. Chicken, rice, vegetables. She set the table for 3. Thomas ate in silence. Kyle pushed food around his plate but barely touched it. Linda tried to make conversation. She asked how he was feeling, if he needed anything, if he wanted to talk. Kyle stood up, left his plate on the table, and went to his room. Linda heard the door lock. She told herself she had done the right thing. He was her son. Mothers do not abandon their children. Mothers give second chances. She had raised Kyle to be better than this. She had given him everything. A good home. Stability. Love. This had to be a mistake, a misunderstanding. The courts would see that. He would get help. He would change. Thomas disagreed. He had told Linda not to post bail. He had told her Kyle was dangerous. He had read the charges. Torture. That word alone should have been enough. But Linda would not listen. She could not accept that her son was capable of what the police said he had done. Thomas stopped arguing. There was no point. Linda had made her decision. Meanwhile, Destiny was living with her mother. Patricia had insisted. Destiny had been released from the hospital after 4 days. Her burns were healing, but the psychological damage was deeper. She could not sleep. Every sound made her jump. She had nightmares about Kyle finding her. Her mother stayed awake with her most nights, sitting in the room until Destiny finally dozed off. Marcus visited every day. He brought food, watched movies with his sister, played with his nephew. He tried to keep things normal. He tried to make her laugh. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes Destiny would smile, and for a moment she seemed like herself again. But then her phone would buzz, or a car would drive by, and the fear would come back. Destiny had not posted on social media since the attack. Her boutique was on hold. School was on hold. Everything was on hold. She was surviving. That was all. On July 13th, Patricia received a call from a victim advocate with the prosecutor's office. The advocate informed her that Kyle had been released on bail. Destiny was in the room when her mother answered. She saw her mother's face change. She knew something was wrong. "He's out," Patricia said after hanging up. Destiny did not respond. She just stared at the wall. Her mother asked if she wanted to file a restraining order. Destiny nodded. They went to the courthouse the next morning. The paperwork was filed. A hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Kyle was ordered to stay away. But Destiny knew orders did not stop people like him. July 14th. Kyle spent most of the day in his room. He came out once to eat. Linda tried again to talk to him. She asked about his ankle monitor, if it was uncomfortable, if he needed her to adjust it. Kyle told her to stop hovering. She left him alone. That night, Kyle made a phone call. Not from his cell phone, which had been confiscated by police, but from the house landline. The call lasted 3 minutes. Nobody knows what was said. Phone records would later show the number belonged to a woman named Jasmine Cole. She was 23 years old. She lived in Detroit, and she had been seeing Kyle for the past 6 months. Destiny did not know about Jasmine. Nobody did. Kyle had kept that part of his life hidden. Jasmine worked at a salon on the east side. She had met Kyle at a gas station in February. He told her he was single. He told her he worked in construction. He told her a lot of things that were not true. They started spending time together. He would visit her apartment when he said he was working late. Destiny never suspected. She was too busy with the baby, with school, with trying to keep Kyle happy. Jasmine had not heard from Kyle in over a month. She did not know he had been arrested. She did not know about Destiny. She did not know anything. When Kyle called that night, he told her he missed her. He told her he wanted to see her. He told her to come to his mother's house the next day. She agreed. July 15th. Morning. Linda left for work at 7. Thomas left an hour later. Kyle was alone in the house. At 9:30, he called Destiny. She did not answer. He called again, and again. On the fourth call, she picked up. "What do you want?" she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Kyle's tone was soft, almost apologetic. He said he wanted to see their son. He said he missed him. He said he knew he had made mistakes, but he was still the boy's father. He deserved to see him, just for an hour, just to hold him. Destiny said no. She told him to leave her alone. She hung up. Kyle called back. This time he changed his approach. He said his mother wanted to see her grandson, that Linda had been asking about the baby, that it would mean a lot to her. He promised he would not even be there. He would leave before Destiny arrived. She could visit with Linda, let his mother spend time with the baby, and go. No drama, no problems. Destiny hesitated. She had always liked Linda. Linda had been kind to her. She had helped with the baby when he was born. She had given them furniture, clothes, money. Destiny felt guilty keeping the baby away from his grandmother. It was not Linda's fault that Kyle was a monster. She agreed. She would come by that evening. 6 o'clock. Kyle promised he would be gone. That afternoon, Jasmine Cole drove to Oakwood Street. She parked in front of the Richardson house and texted Kyle. He came outside and got in her car. They talked for a few minutes. Then he convinced her to come inside. He said his parents were not home. He said they could spend time together. She followed him in. At 5:45, Destiny pulled into the driveway. Her son was strapped in his car seat in the back. She checked her phone. No messages from Kyle confirming he had left. She almost drove away, but she had promised Linda. She got out of the car, unbuckled her son, and walked to the front door. It was unlocked. She pushed it open and stepped inside. The living room was empty. She called out for Linda, no response. She walked further into the house, holding her son close. She heard movement upstairs, footsteps. Kyle appeared at the top of the staircase. Destiny froze. Her heart stopped. She turned to run, but Kyle was already coming down the stairs. Fast. She made it to the door, but he grabbed her by the hair and pulled her back inside. She screamed. She tried to fight. The baby started crying. From the kitchen, Jasmine heard the screaming. She ran into the living room and saw Kyle struggling with a woman holding a baby. She did not understand what was happening. She yelled at Kyle to stop. He did not stop. Thomas Richardson arrived home at 6:10. He opened the front door and walked into chaos. Destiny on the floor. Kyle on top of her. A baby screaming. Another woman shouting. Thomas rushed forward to pull Kyle off, but Kyle grabbed a knife from the side table. What happened next lasted less than 2 minutes. Kyle stabbed Destiny. He stabbed Jasmine. He stabbed Thomas. Over and over. Blood covered the floor, the walls, the furniture. The baby was still screaming, somehow untouched in the corner where Destiny had placed him before she fell. Linda Richardson walked through the door at 6:15. She saw her husband on the ground. She saw the two women. She saw her son holding a knife. She ran. Linda Richardson ran. She did not know where she was going. She just ran. Down the driveway, into the street, her shoes slapping against the pavement. She was bleeding. She did not know when Kyle had cut her. She did not feel it happen. But blood was soaking through her shirt, dripping down her arm. She made it 3 houses down before her legs gave out. She collapsed on a neighbor's lawn. The neighbor, a woman named Carol Bennett, was watering her flowers when she saw Linda fall. Carol dropped the hose and ran over. She knelt beside Linda and asked what happened. Linda could not speak. She was gasping for air, clutching her side. Carol saw the blood and immediately called 911. Officers arrived within 4 minutes. The first unit on scene found Linda semi-conscious on the grass. Paramedics loaded her into an ambulance. She kept saying the same thing over and over. "My son, my house, he has a knife, he killed them." Police approached the Richardson home cautiously. The front door was still open. They could hear a baby crying inside. They called out. No response. They entered with weapons drawn. The living room looked like a slaughterhouse. Blood was everywhere. 2 women were on the floor. Both had multiple stab wounds. Neither was moving. An older man was near the kitchen entrance, also unresponsive. A 1-year-old boy sat in the corner, covered in blood that was not his own, screaming. Officers cleared the first floor, no sign of the suspect. They moved upstairs. They found Kyle in the master bedroom. He was sitting on the bed holding a knife, staring at the wall. He did not react when they entered. He did not move. They ordered him to drop the weapon. He did not respond. It took 3 officers to restrain him. He did not resist. He did not speak. He just stared. Kyle was taken into custody and transported to Wayne County Jail. The baby was taken to Children's Hospital for evaluation. Physically, he was unharmed. Emotionally, nobody knew what damage had been done. Back at the house, detectives began processing the scene. The coroner arrived to examine the bodies. Destiny Marshall, 22 years old, 14 stab wounds. Jasmine Cole, 23 years old, 11 stab wounds. Thomas Richardson, 71 years old, 9 stab wounds. All 3 were pronounced dead at the scene. Linda Richardson was rushed into surgery at Detroit Receiving Hospital. She had been stabbed twice in the abdomen. The wounds were deep but not fatal. Doctors worked for 3 hours to repair the damage. She survived. When she woke up, a detective was waiting to take her statement. She told them everything. How she had posted bail. How Kyle had been on house arrest. How she had come home and found him attacking those people. She said she did not know who the other woman was. She said she did not know why Destiny was there. She said she did not understand any of it. The detective asked her if Kyle had said anything before she ran. Linda shook her head. He did not say a word. He just looked at me. Like he did not even recognize me. News of the murders spread quickly. By midnight, reporters were camped outside the Richardson home. By morning, the story was national. A man released on bail for torture had killed 3 people 36 hours later. The headline wrote itself. Patricia Marshall received the call at 7 in the morning on July 16th. A victim advocate from the prosecutor's office informed her that her daughter was dead. Patricia collapsed. Marcus was there. He heard his mother scream and ran into the room. He saw her on the floor, the phone still in her hand. He picked it up. The advocate repeated the information. Destiny had been killed. She had been at the suspect's home. Police were investigating. Marcus did not understand. Why would Destiny go there? She had a restraining order. She knew Kyle was dangerous. Nothing made sense. He called his sister's phone. It went straight to voicemail. He called again and again. He kept calling until a detective answered and told him to stop. The phone was evidence now. The Marshall family arrived at the police station later that morning. They demanded answers. Why had Kyle been released? Who approved the bail? Why was he not being monitored? A supervisor explained the system. Bail is set by a magistrate. The GPS monitor tracks location, not actions. Kyle had not left the house. Technically, he had not violated his release conditions until he killed 3 people. Patricia screamed at them. She said the system had failed her daughter. She said Destiny had done everything right. She had reported the abuse. She had pressed charges. She had testified. And still, she was dead. The supervisor had no response. That afternoon, Wayne County Prosecutor Daniel Hayes held a press conference. He stood at a podium surrounded by microphones and cameras. He looked exhausted. He began by expressing condolences to the families of the victims. Then he addressed the bail decision. Magistrate Donna Phillips set a bond that was wholly inappropriate given the severity of the charges. Our office objected. We requested a higher bond. We were preparing to present evidence at a preliminary hearing to argue for remand. We never got that chance. This tragedy could have been prevented. Reporters shouted questions. Why was the bail so low? What would happen to the magistrate? Would there be an investigation? Hayes raised his hand for silence. He said the prosecutor's office would be reviewing all cases handled by Magistrate Phillips. He said they would be pushing for bond reform. He said Kyle Richardson would never see daylight again. But none of that brought Destiny back. None of that brought Jasmine back. None of that brought Thomas back. Jasmine Cole's mother, Angela Cole, learned about her daughter's death from the news. She had been at work when a coworker showed her a headline on their phone. Detroit woman killed in triple homicide. Jasmine's name was listed as one of the victims. Angela called the police. They confirmed it. She left work immediately and drove to the station. She demanded to see her daughter's body. They would not let her. It was still part of an active crime scene. Angela had not known Jasmine was seeing anyone. Her daughter had not mentioned Kyle. She had no idea why Jasmine had been at that house. Detectives interviewed her for 2 hours, trying to piece together the relationship. Angela could not help them. She knew nothing. Thomas Richardson's family was notified by police that same day. His daughter from a previous marriage, Monica Richardson, lived in Georgia. She had spoken to her father on the phone just 3 days earlier. He had sounded happy. He had talked about retirement, about traveling, about spending more time with family. Now he was gone. Monica blamed Linda. She said Linda should never have posted bail. She said Linda had enabled Kyle. She said Linda had brought a killer into their home and gotten her father murdered. When reporters asked if she planned to attend her father's funeral, Monica said she did not know. She said she could not be in the same room as Linda. Linda remained in the hospital for 5 days. She had police protection. Threats were coming in. People wanted her dead. They said she was as guilty as her son. They said she had killed those people by setting him free. Linda did not speak to anyone. She stared at the ceiling and cried. On July 20th, Kyle Richardson was arraigned before Judge Victor Hamilton in Wayne County Circuit Court. The charges were read aloud. 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of assault with intent to murder. Judge Hamilton reviewed the case file. He looked at Kyle. He asked if the defendant had anything to say. Kyle remained silent. His court-appointed attorney spoke for him. Not guilty pleas were entered on all counts. Judge Hamilton set the next hearing for August. Bail was denied. Kyle was remanded to Wayne County Jail pending trial. As officers led him out of the courtroom, family members of the victims shouted at him, "Monster, killer, rot in hell." Kyle did not react. He kept his eyes forward and walked out. Outside the courthouse, Patricia Marshall spoke to reporters. She stood with Marcus and her other children. She held a photo of Destiny. She said her daughter had been a light, a fighter, a survivor. She said Destiny had tried to escape. She had trusted the system to protect her, and the system had failed. This should never have happened. My daughter should be alive. Kyle Richardson should have been in jail. Instead, he was released, and 3 people are dead. Someone needs to be held accountable. But accountability would not come easy. And the full truth was still hidden. 3 months passed. The funerals were held. Destiny was buried in a purple casket at Roseland Park Cemetery. Over 200 people attended. Her son was there, too young to understand why everyone was crying. Patricia held him during the service, whispering to him about his mother, about how strong she was, about how much she loved him. Jasmine Cole's funeral was smaller. Angela arranged everything alone. Jasmine's father had left when she was a child. She had no siblings. Just her mother and a few close friends. They gathered at a small chapel in Detroit. Angela barely spoke. She sat in the front row, staring at the casket, trying to understand why her daughter had been in that house. Thomas Richardson was buried with military honors. His fellow veterans attended in uniform. They folded the flag and presented it to Monica. She accepted it without looking at Linda. Linda had been discharged from the hospital but did not attend the funeral. She stayed home, alone. Kyle remained in jail. His attorney visited twice. Both meetings lasted less than 10 minutes. Kyle refused to cooperate. He would not discuss the case. He would not explain what happened. He just sat in silence, staring at the table. In September, detectives working Kyle's case received a call from the cold case unit. They had been reviewing unsolved homicides from June and noticed something. An unidentified victim found on June 8th. Female, mid-20s, blunt force trauma to the head. Her car had been stolen and burned. No suspects, no leads. They had finally identified her through dental records. Her name was Shanice Carter, 24 years old, last seen leaving her apartment on June 7th. The detective asked if the name meant anything. It did not. They ran it through their database anyway. Shanice's phone records showed her last call was to a number registered to Kyle Richardson. The call lasted 4 minutes. It was made at 9:30 on the night of June 7th, less than 12 hours before her body was found. The cold case detective contacted the lead investigator on Kyle's triple homicide. They compared notes. Kyle had been arrested on June 5th for torturing Destiny. He had been in custody until his arraignment on June 15th, but Shanice had been killed on June 8th. Kyle was in jail when she died, or so they thought. They pulled Kyle's booking records. He had been arrested at 11:20 on June 5th, but the intake process had been delayed due to overcrowding. He had not been officially processed until 2 in the afternoon on June 6th. That meant for nearly 15 hours, Kyle had been in custody, but not yet logged into the system. During that window, bail could not be set. He was essentially in limbo. Except there was a problem. Jail surveillance footage showed Kyle in a holding cell on June 7th, but on June 8th, there was a gap. From 6 in the morning until noon, Kyle was not on camera. Security logs showed he had been moved for a medical evaluation. An officer had escorted him to the infirmary, but the infirmary had no record of treating him that day. The detectives requested the transport logs. They found the entry. Kyle Richardson had been escorted to the infirmary at 6:15 on June 8th. The escorting officer had signed him out, but there was no sign-in at the infirmary, and no record of him returning to his cell until noon. 6 hours unaccounted for. The officer who had escorted Kyle was questioned. He said he had dropped Kyle off at the infirmary and returned to his post. He assumed medical staff had logged him in. Medical staff said Kyle never arrived. Somewhere between the cell block and the infirmary, Kyle had disappeared for 6 hours. Investigators reviewed external camera footage from the jail perimeter. At 7:40 on the morning of June 8th, a man matching Kyle's description was seen walking near the rear loading dock. He was not in handcuffs. He was not accompanied by an officer. He walked off camera heading toward the street. They pulled traffic cameras from the surrounding area. At 8:10, Kyle was seen getting into a dark sedan 2 blocks from the jail. The license plate was registered to Shanice Carter. The timeline made sense now. Kyle had somehow left the jail. He had met Shanice. He had killed her. He had dumped her body, he had burned her car, and he had returned to jail before anyone noticed he was gone. The question was how. Internal Affairs launched an investigation. They interviewed every officer on duty that day. Most had no useful information, but one officer, a 7-year veteran named Derek Mills, had called in sick the day after Shanice's murder. He had not returned to work since. Investigators went to his home. He was gone. His apartment was empty. His phone was disconnected. They issued a warrant for his arrest. 2 weeks later, Mills was found in Ohio. He was extradited back to Michigan. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he confessed. Kyle had paid him $5,000 to let him out. Mills had falsified the transport log. He had escorted Kyle to the loading dock and let him walk away. Kyle had promised to return by noon. He did. Mills logged him back in. Nobody questioned it. Mills said he did not know Kyle was going to kill anyone. He said Kyle told him he just needed to handle some personal business. He said he needed the money. His daughter was sick. Medical bills were piling up. He made a mistake. a mistake that cost Shanice Carter her life. When the news broke, the media exploded. A jail officer had accepted a bribe and released a violent offender. That offender had committed murder and returned to custody. And nobody had known for 3 months. The Wayne County Sheriff held a press conference. He called it an isolated incident. He promised reforms. He promised accountability. The public did not believe him. Shanice Carter's mother, Brenda Carter, had been waiting for answers since June. When detectives finally contacted her in September, she thought they were calling to say the case had gone cold. Instead, they told her they had found her daughter's killer, and that he had been in jail the entire time. Brenda did not understand. How could he have killed her daughter from inside a jail, they explained. She listened in silence. When they finished, she asked one question. Did he know my daughter? They said they did not think so. It appeared to be random. Shanice had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Brenda hung up. She sat in her living room and stared at Shanice's photo on the mantel. Her daughter had been murdered by a stranger. A man who had escaped from jail killed her and gone back to jail like nothing happened. And now that same man had killed 3 more people. In October, prosecutors added Shanice Carter's murder to Kyle's charges. He was now facing 4 counts of first-degree murder. His attorney tried to negotiate. The prosecution refused. There would be no plea deal. This case was going to trial. The trial began on March 6, 2023. Nearly 8 months after the murders. The courtroom was packed. Family members of all 4 victims sat on one side. Linda Richardson sat alone on the other. She had aged dramatically. Her hair had gone gray. She looked 20 years older. Kyle entered wearing an orange jumpsuit and shackles. He showed no emotion. He sat beside his attorney and stared straight ahead. The judge, Margaret Lawson, called the court to order. Jury selection had taken 3 days. 12 people would now decide Kyle Richardson's fate. The prosecution opened with a simple statement. This is a case about control, about jealousy, about a man who believed he owned the people in his life, and when they tried to leave, when they tried to be free, he killed them. The defense had little to work with. Their strategy was to argue diminished capacity. They claimed Kyle had suffered a psychological break, that years of untreated mental illness had led to the violence. They brought in a psychiatrist who testified that Kyle showed signs of severe personality disorder. The prosecution countered with their own expert who said Kyle knew exactly what he was doing. He had planned. He had lied. He had manipulated. Over the next 3 weeks, the prosecution built their case. They presented evidence from all 4 murders. They showed the jury photographs of Destiny's injuries from June 5th. Burns, bruises, strangulation marks. They showed crime scene photos from the house on Oakwood Street. Blood on the walls, blood on the floor. The jury looked away. They called witnesses. Ruth Caldwell testified about the night Destiny had come to her door. She described the condition Destiny was in, how terrified she looked, how she kept saying he was going to kill her. The defense did not cross-examine. Carol Bennett testified about finding Linda Richardson on her lawn, about the blood, about how Linda kept saying "my son" over and over. The jury took notes. Detectives testified about the jail escape, about Shanice Carter's murder, about the bribe, about how Kyle had walked out of custody, killed a woman, and walked back in. The jury stared at Kyle. He did not react. Angela Cole took the stand. She spoke about Jasmine, about how her daughter had dreams, how she wanted to open her own salon one day, how she had been saving money, how she had been planning her future, and how she had trusted the wrong person. Angela cried through her entire testimony. The defense did not ask her any questions. Brenda Carter testified next. She talked about Shanice, about how close they had been, about how Shanice called her every day, about how she had been planning to visit for the 4th of July but never made it. Brenda said she still waited for those phone calls, that sometimes she forgot Shanice was gone. The courtroom was silent. Monica Richardson spoke about her father, about his service in the Air Force, about how he had survived war only to be killed in his own home. She said Thomas had tried to save those women, that he had died trying to protect them. She looked directly at Linda when she said it. Linda looked down. Patricia Marshall was the last family member to testify. She walked slowly to the stand. She held a photo of Destiny. The prosecutor asked her to tell the jury about her daughter. Patricia talked for 20 minutes. She talked about Destiny's dreams, her business, her son, her strength. She talked about how Destiny had fought to survive, how she had reported the abuse, how she had trusted the system, and the system failed her. Patricia's voice broke. My daughter did everything right. She escaped. She called the police. She pressed charges. She was supposed to be safe. But a magistrate decided $15,000 was enough to let her abuser go free. And 36 hours later, my daughter was dead. The defense objected. The judge sustained. But the jury had heard it. When Patricia stepped down, she walked past Kyle. She stopped and looked at him. Do you even feel anything? She asked. Kyle did not respond. Bailiffs escorted her out. The prosecution rested. The defense called only 2 witnesses, the psychiatrist and Kyle's aunt, who testified that Kyle had been a quiet child, that he had struggled in school, that he had been bullied. It did not matter. The evidence was overwhelming. On March 28th, closing arguments began. The prosecutor stood before the jury. He recounted every detail, every victim, every lie, every moment of violence. He said Kyle Richardson was not sick, he was not broken, he was dangerous, and he deserved to spend the rest of his life in prison. The defense argued that Kyle needed help, not punishment, that the system had failed him too, that mental health resources could have prevented this. The jury did not seem convinced. Judge Lawson gave instructions. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They returned with a verdict. Guilty. 4 counts of first-degree murder. 1 count of assault with intent to murder. 1 count of torture. 1 count of escape from custody. Guilty on all charges. Kyle showed no reaction. His attorney put a hand on his shoulder. The families wept, some in relief, some in grief. Patricia collapsed into Marcus's arms. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. On April 12th, the courtroom filled again. This time, victims were allowed to give impact statements. Angela Cole spoke first. She told Kyle he had stolen her only child, that she would never be a grandmother, that he had destroyed her life. She said she hoped he suffered every day for what he had done. Brenda Carter spoke next. She said Shanice had done nothing to him, that she had not even known him, that he had killed her for no reason. She said she would never forgive him. Never. Monica Richardson addressed the court. She said her father had been a hero, that he had served his country, that he had died protecting strangers. She said Kyle was a coward, that he had murdered defenseless people. She said she hoped he rotted. Marcus Marshall read a statement on behalf of his family. He talked about Destiny's son, about how the boy would grow up without his mother, about how he would have to explain one day why she was gone. He said Kyle had taken everything from them. He turned to Kyle. You are a monster. You deserve worse than prison. Judge Lawson allowed Kyle to make a statement if he wished. His attorney advised against it. Kyle stood anyway. He looked at the families. He opened his mouth, then he closed it. He sat back down without saying a word. Judge Lawson addressed the court. She said she had presided over many cases, but this one stood out, not because of the brutality, though that was undeniable, but because it was preventable. She said the system had multiple opportunities to stop Kyle Richardson, and every time the system failed. She sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole, 4 consecutive life sentences, 1 for each victim, plus an additional 20 years for the other charges. Kyle would die in prison. As officers led him away, Linda Richardson stood. She tried to speak. Nobody let her. The families walked out. Linda sat back down alone. The day after sentencing, Magistrate Donna Phillips resigned. She released a brief statement through her attorney. She expressed sympathy for the victims' families and said she took full responsibility for her bail decision. She did not explain why she had set the amount so low. She did not apologize. She simply stepped down and disappeared from public life. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office launched a review of every case Phillips had handled during her tenure. They found a pattern: inappropriately low bail amounts for violent offenders. Domestic violence cases treated as minor disputes, victims ignored, abusers released. In 18 months, Phillips had set bail for over 300 defendants. Nearly half had been rearrested while awaiting trial. Kyle Richardson was not an anomaly. He was a symptom. The county board voted to reform the bail system. New guidelines were implemented. Magistrates would no longer have sole discretion in violent felony cases. A panel review would be required. Victim advocates would be present at hearings. GPS monitoring would include real-time alerts. It was progress. But it came too late for Destiny, Jasmine, Thomas, and Shanice. Officer Derek Mills pleaded guilty to bribery and aiding escape. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. He lost his pension. His daughter, the one he claimed to have been helping, refused to visit him. She said he had destroyed their family for $5,000. Linda Richardson never spoke publicly again. She sold the house on Oakwood Street. The new owners renovated completely. They painted over the bloodstains. They replaced the floors. But neighbors still avoided the property. Everyone knew what had happened there. Linda moved to a small apartment in Dearborn. She lived alone. She did not work. She survived on Thomas's pension and Social Security. Occasionally, reporters would find her and ask for comment. She never answered. Monica Richardson filed a wrongful death lawsuit against her. Linda did not contest it. She gave Monica everything. The house sale proceeds. Thomas's life insurance, all of it. It did not bring Thomas back, but Monica said it was something. Patricia Marshall became an advocate. She traveled to high schools across Michigan speaking about domestic violence. She brought Destiny's son with her sometimes. She would show his photo and tell students this boy will never know his mother. She would explain the warning signs: jealousy, control, isolation, violence. She would tell young women that leaving is not weakness. Staying is not love. And anyone who tells you otherwise does not have your best interests at heart. Marcus started a foundation in Destiny's name. It provided financial assistance to domestic violence survivors trying to leave abusive relationships, emergency housing, legal fees, childcare, transportation. All the things Destiny had worried about when she considered leaving Kyle. The foundation helped over 200 women in its first year. Angela Cole never recovered. She closed Jasmine's social media accounts. She packed up her daughter's apartment. She donated most of the belongings to charity. But she kept Jasmine's cosmetology license. She framed it and hung it in her living room. It was supposed to be the beginning of Jasmine's career. Instead, it became a memorial. Brenda Carter pushed for changes in how jails handle inmate transport. She testified before the state legislature. She demanded accountability. She said Shanice had been failed by every level of the system: a corrupt officer, a negligent jail, a broken bail system. Her testimony led to new oversight policies, random audits, body cameras for all transport officers, electronic tracking that could not be falsified. Brenda said it would not bring Shanice back, but maybe it would save someone else. Kyle Richardson is serving his sentence at Kinross Correctional Facility in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. He has been in solitary confinement since his arrival. Prison officials say it is for his own protection. Inmates do not look kindly on men who murder women. He has no visitors. Linda tried once. He refused to see her. He spends 23 hours a day in a cell. He will die there. Destiny's son is 7 years old now. He lives with Patricia. He attends school. He plays soccer. He asks about his mother sometimes. Patricia shows him photos. She tells him stories. She makes sure he knows Destiny loved him, that she fought to protect him, that she wanted him to have a better life. On the anniversary of the murders, the families gather at Roseland Park Cemetery. They place flowers on the graves. They share memories. They cry together. This year, Destiny's son placed a drawing on her headstone. It showed 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, both smiling. He had written in crayon, "Me and Mommy in Heaven." The case changed Michigan law. Judges now receive mandatory training on domestic violence dynamics. Bail reform continues, but advocates say it is not enough. Every year, women are killed by partners they tried to leave. Every year, the system fails to protect them. Destiny Marshall was 22 years old. She had dreams. She had a business. She had a son. She had a future. Kyle Richardson took all of it, and a magistrate's decision let him do it. $15,000, 36 hours, 4 lives. The numbers tell the story, but they do not capture the grief, the rage, the preventable loss. They do not bring anyone back. This is what remains. Warnings unheeded. A system reformed too late, families shattered, and the knowledge that it did not have to happen. Abuse is not love. Control is not care. And second chances for abusers often mean no chance at all for their victims. If someone you know is showing the signs, speak up. If you are living it, leave. There are people who will help. There are resources. There is life beyond abuse. Destiny tried to find that life. She almost made it.